Everything you build on the outside first gets built on the inside. A weak mind produces weak action, and a mind clouded by negativity slowly drags the future down with it. Most people aren't trapped by their circumstances, they're trapped by a loop. The same fear, the same excuses, the same routines, repeated until those patterns calcify into identity. Long before success shows up in the real world, it has to exist somewhere else first, in thought. Hear this clearly. You cannot construct a winning life on top of a defeated mindset. The mind has to be trained on purpose, fed on purpose, guarded on purpose, because anything you rehearse long enough becomes something your mind treats as fact. Rehearse doubt, and you'll become a doubtful person. Rehearse discipline, and discipline becomes who you are. That's the entire mechanism behind mental conditioning. A powerful life starts with a powerful mind. And the instant your thinking shifts, your trajectory starts shifting with it. Rewire the mind, and suddenly, the impossible stops feeling impossible. You become a living expression of whatever occupies your thoughts most often. Sit with that for a second. Your thoughts are not throwaway background noise. They architect your actions. They architect your habits. Eventually, they architect the whole shape of your life. Here's something worth noticing. Most people try to renovate their life from the outside in, chasing more income, better breaks, different surroundings. But authentic change always begins on the inside. If the mind stays the same, nothing else really moves. A mind stuck in negativity will manufacture problems out of every opportunity. A mind trained in discipline will manufacture opportunity out of every problem. That's the raw power of thought itself. There was a stretch of life where I realized my biggest opponent was never another person. It was my own internal dialogue, the doubt, the fear, the endless hedging. I'm not ready. What if this fails? Maybe I just don't have it. Slowly, without my noticing, those thoughts began steering my behavior because the mind starts believing whatever it hears on repeat. Sloppy thinking produces sloppy outcomes, which is exactly why mindset carries so much weight. Understand this at a deep level. Your life travels in the direction of your most dominant, most repeated thoughts. Dwell on failure constantly, and hesitation becomes automatic. Dwell on excuses, and avoidance becomes automatic. But train the mind toward growth, and your behavior starts adjusting on its own. That's the real starting line for transformation. Not your bank balance, not your zip code, but your thinking. So here's a question worth sitting with. What thoughts are you putting on repeat every single day? Are you nourishing your mind or starving it? Every thought you entertain is a seed, and seeds, given enough time, grow into something. A person who constantly insists life is brutal usually engineers a brutal life for himself. A person who insists I'll find a way starts cultivating real resilience instead. That's exactly why high performers guard their mental input so carefully. Good books, wise counsel, growth-oriented company, because they've internalized a simple truth. The mind is programmable, and whatever gets fed into it daily becomes the operating reality you live inside. You can't think like everyone else and still expect a life unlike everyone else's. The thinking has to be different. The actions have to be different. The responses have to be different. That's where the real beginning of success lives. Your life only improves once you improve, and improvement always starts in thought. Picture changing the conversation running inside your own head. Instead of I can't, try, I'm still learning this. Instead of I always fail, try, I grow through every mistake. These swaps look small on paper, but repeated daily, they reshape identity, and identity is the blueprint for destiny. Your mind can become either your sharpest weapon or your tightest prison. Which one depends entirely on what you let through the gate. So guard your thinking, protect your mental space, train it like a discipline, not a hobby. Because once thinking improves, decisions improve, habits improve, confidence improves, and eventually the entire trajectory of life starts improving. Shift the thinking first, and the life follows close behind. Guard the gate. You have to stand watch at the entrance of your own mind. Most people are careful about what they put in their bodies, but reckless about what they let into their heads. And that's a dangerous imbalance. Because the mind absorbs everything it's exposed to. Conversations, negativity, distraction, excuse-making. Over time, all of that residue becomes the texture of your thinking. A toxic environment manufactures toxic thought patterns, and toxic thought patterns manufacture a toxic life. That's the real reason so many people stay stuck. Not a lack of talent, but a mind cluttered with fear, doubt, complaint, and excuse, replayed on a loop every single day. I remember a season where I was surrounded almost entirely by negativity. People who complained reflexively. People who blamed everything external. People without a shred of vision. And without realizing it, I started thinking like them. That's how influence actually works. You gradually become a composite of the people you spend the most hours around. Which is exactly why guarding your mental environment matters so much. Not everything deserves entry into your mind. Not every voice deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves your belief. A genuinely high-quality life requires mental filtering as a discipline. You have to learn to screen what gets in, because whatever gets repeated enough eventually hardens into belief. Here you can't do this enough times. Here life isn't fair enough times. Here success isn't realistic enough times. And the mind starts quietly accepting those positions as settled fact. Once a limitation gets accepted internally, action weakens to match it. Negative conditioning rarely announces itself as dangerous. Usually, it looks completely ordinary. Endless scrolling, idle gossip, low-grade complaining, repeated daily in small doses that quietly drain focus, drain energy, drain ambition. Don't let weak thinking lease space in your head rent-free. High performers take their mental diet seriously. They read material that strengthens resolve, consume ideas that fuel growth, and choose company that understands the gravity of influence. Not because those people are flawless, but because they respect how contagious thought patterns really are. So ask yourself honestly, what are you feeding your mind on a daily basis? Fear or faith? Excuse-making or ownership? Distraction or growth? Because your future is tightly wound around that answer. You cannot pour negativity into your mind all day and still expect to feel confident. You cannot marinate in lazy thinking and still expect discipline to show up. The mind reflects whatever it consumes, which means you have to become deliberate, protective, intentional about the input. A resilient mind doesn't happen by accident. It gets built on purpose, day after day. Stand guard at that gate. Protect your peace. Protect your focus. Protect your standards. Because once thinking improves, everything downstream starts improving too. Attitude shifts, habits shift, decisions shift, and gradually, the whole of life shifts with it. The world is loud, noisy, and saturated with negativity and distraction. But a disciplined person learns to be selective about what gets let in, because they've internalized one simple law. Keep feeding the mind garbage, and eventually life will reflect exactly that. The quiet power of repetition. We become what we consistently do. Sit with that. Your life isn't shaped in a single dramatic moment. It's shaped through repetition. What you do every day, what you let slide every day, what you tolerate every day, that's the raw material your future gets built from. A remarkable life isn't manufactured by motivation. It's manufactured by habit. Simple, repeated, disciplined habits. Because repetition carries real structural power. It doesn't just shape your actions, it shapes your identity. I noticed this firsthand. Small actions, repeated daily, eventually became automatic. At first, every rep felt forced and uncomfortable. Over time, it became second nature. That's how the mind operates. Repetition is the engine of learning, and it's also the engine of discipline. Every habit you repeat is quietly reprogramming your mind. Repeat laziness, and laziness becomes your default setting. Repeat excuses, and you become dependent on them. Repeat discipline, and discipline becomes who you are. It's a simple equation, though simple doesn't mean easy, because habits don't shift in a single day. They shift through small, recurring battles. The battle to get up early, the battle to stay focused, the battle to resist distraction, the battle to keep promises made to yourself. These battles look small from the outside, but they quietly determine the whole arc of a life. Most people drastically underestimate small habits, yet small habits compound into massive consequences. A minor distraction today becomes a wasted year down the line. A minor act of discipline today becomes a powerful future down the line. Success, stripped down to its essence, is just a handful of simple disciplines practiced consistently. Picture two different men. One keeps choosing comfort, the other keeps choosing discipline. One scrolls endlessly, the other reads, studies, grows. One avoids friction, the other builds consistency, brick by brick. Years pass, and their lives end up almost unrecognizable from each other. Not because of one massive decision, but because of thousands of small, repeated ones. Your mind is being programmed constantly, whether you're steering that process or not. If you don't take control of it, something else inevitably will, which is exactly why habits matter so much. They quietly seize control of your direction, so you have to choose them with real intention. Choose discipline over delay. Choose action over excuse. Choose growth over comfort. Every choice you make sends a signal straight to your mind, and the mind is always listening. At first, it resists the new pattern, but with enough repetition, it adapts, learns, and eventually transforms completely. So ask yourself, what are you repeating daily? Because your habits are speaking far louder than your words ever could. They're telling the real, unfiltered truth about where your future is headed. Not what you claim you want, but what you actually consistently do. You don't need to overhaul your entire life in one sweeping move. You only need to change your repetition, one habit at a time, one discipline at a time, one small upgrade at a time, and your identity begins shifting underneath you. Small disciplines, repeated consistently, produce outsized results. That's the entire secret. And once it clicks, you stop chasing fleeting motivation and start building durable systems instead. Those systems, in turn, build the rest of your life. Repetition doesn't just generate habits, it generates the person you ultimately become. Seeing it before you hold it. What you can clearly picture in your mind, you can eventually hold in your hands. Sit with that for a moment. Every meaningful achievement is built twice. First as a mental image, then as a physical reality. Most people never quite grasp this. They wake up, react to whatever the day throws at them, and drift through without real direction, vision, or clarity. Your mind is always generating images, whether by deliberate design or by lazy default. If you don't consciously choose your own vision, your fears will gladly choose one for you. And that's exactly where a lot of people get permanently stuck. They picture failure in vivid detail. They imagine obstacles before they even exist. They quietly expect disappointment. And gradually, life starts conforming to match that internal picture. Because the mind tends to follow whatever image it holds most vividly. Energy flows toward wherever attention goes. Visualization isn't idle fantasy. It's a form of mental training. It's how you teach your mind what to expect, what to believe is possible, and what to actually pursue. There was a point where I started picturing my goals with real clarity, and my actions began shifting almost automatically. Not because external circumstances changed, but because my focus changed. And focus changes nearly everything downstream of it. A genuinely high-value person doesn't move through life without a vision. He carries it daily. He can see the destination clearly even while he's still nowhere near it. He doesn't wait around for proof before believing. He builds the belief first. Faith perceives what isn't visible yet and achieves what looks impossible from the outside. That's where real success originates. Picture two men again. One sees only problems. The other sees possibility everywhere he looks. One fixates on what's missing. The other fixates on what's still achievable. One shrinks under pressure. The other expands because of it. That contrast is the whole difference. Here's something worth understanding deeply. Your mind can't reliably distinguish between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. That's precisely why visualization carries so much weight. What you repeatedly picture starts shaping your emotional state, your confidence, your decision-making, and eventually your actions in the real world. So ask yourself honestly, what are you visualizing on a daily basis? Failure or success? Doubt or growth? Because the images running quietly in your mind are constructing your outer reality whether you notice it or not. If you want a meaningfully better life, you first need a better internal picture. See yourself disciplined. See yourself focused. See yourself winning the small, unglamorous battles, not once, but on repeat, day after day, because repetition builds belief, and belief is what ultimately drives action. You can't consistently act far beyond the level of your own self-image, which means rising requires upgrading the vision first. A person becomes whatever he most consistently pictures in his own mind. That's simply how it works. So start thinking bigger, seeing further, imagining more boldly, not as an escape from reality, but as a deliberate way of shaping it. Every real achievement starts life as a mental picture, a decision, a vision, a belief held with conviction. Train your mind to see success clearly, and you naturally start moving toward it. Visualize the life you actually want, and your mind quietly starts constructing it, one day at a time. The real battlefield. Life isn't only about what happens to you. It's far more about what happens inside you. Sit with that. Two people can face the exact same pressure, the exact same struggle, the exact same setback, and still respond in completely different ways. One collapses, the other rises. The deciding factor was never the situation itself. It was mental strength. Mental strength isn't something you're handed at birth. It's something constructed, day by day, choice by choice, thought by thought. I learned this directly. The mind functions like a battlefield, and every single day, competing thoughts fight for control. Optimistic thoughts, fearful thoughts, disciplined thoughts. And whichever one wins that internal fight ends up shaping the life that follows. Protect your mind, and you protect your future right along with it. A fragile mind reacts to everything indiscriminately. A resilient mind responds with control. A fragile mind panics the moment pressure shows up. A resilient mind stays steady and centered. A fragile mind gets swayed by almost anything. A resilient mind filters everything carefully before letting it in. That's the real distinction between the two. The world will constantly try to force its way into your head through negativity, distraction, doubt, and fear. And if you're not vigilant, it will eventually seize control of your thinking entirely. That's exactly why protection matters so much. A genuinely high-value person doesn't let every passing thought take up residence. He interrogates them, filters them, and rejects whatever weakens him, because he understands something important. An unprotected mind leads directly to an unstable life. A disciplined mind, on the other hand, produces a disciplined life. Picture two men once more. One lets every thought wander in unchecked. The other filters each one with intention. One ends up confused and scattered. The other stays sharply focused. One gets distracted at the slightest provocation. The other remains deeply centered. That's the real difference between them. Mental strength is forged in small, often invisible moments. Choosing not to react emotionally, choosing discipline over impulse, choosing patience over frustration. Those quiet moments, repeated often enough, are what actually build strength. Not the dramatic, highlight reel moments. The small, repeated ones nobody else even notices. So ask yourself, what's currently steering your mind? Fear, doubt, or discipline? Clarity or chaos? Because whatever controls your mind ends up controlling your entire life. A strong mind doesn't mean pressure stops existing. It means you no longer surrender to it. You still feel it fully, but you rise above it anyway. You experience the emotion without letting that emotion make your decisions for you. That's maturity. That's real strength. That's control. The strongest person in any room is simply the one who has learned to govern his own mind. If you want a meaningfully better life, start by building a stronger mind. Protect your thoughts, protect your focus, protect your discipline, because every other part of your life flows downstream from there. And once your mind becomes genuinely strong, very little on the outside can easily knock you off course. A strong mind doesn't just react to life, it leads it. Success starts in the mind and gets built through sustained discipline. Sit with that. By now, the truth should be clear. Your thoughts shape your life. Your habits shape your future. And your discipline shapes your destiny. Nothing meaningfully changes until the mind changes first. So take ownership of it. Protect the way you think. Build better habits, one small rep at a time. Strengthen the mind, because every powerful life begins with a powerful mind. Rewire the way you think, and you rewire the future that's waiting on the other side of it.